Hello, loves. Welcome to my channel. Um, I'm here to share my story about my adoption, seeing the patterns and the cycles in my biological family's history after I found and filled in my branches in my tree because I started out with nothing. I knew nothing. Um, and it was a long journey, very painful sometimes. However, I now know who's who my family is, and now I have been seeing the patterns and the cycles that I carried in my own life without even knowing them. And I felt it was time to heal them because the cycles go back hundreds of years. And I think it's just that time for us to see our truths so we can create a new world and not have all our old baggage with us. So today is my grandmother, my biological grandmother's birthday. Her name is Aletta Marie. Um, she was adopted, and so she carried some history with her too. I have filled in those branches. Um, I met my grandmother when I met my mother, and I have a video for that, of the meeting of my mother for the first time. The day after I met my biological mother, she took me over to meet her mother, my grandmother. And we got to the door, she opened it and put her arms around me and said, I have waited so long to feel you, to smell you, to touch you. She said she chased the nurse all the way down the hallway when they took me away from my mom, because she was there when I was born. And my mom gave birth to me, and the nurse wrapped me up and started walking down the hall and take me away. And I guess my grandma just followed her all the way behind her. Just let me see her, just let me see her. But when she opened the door and put her arms around me, I was home. There's a lot of adoption in my family. My father alone, when I called him to tell him he was my dad and that, I'd been looking for him, he told me I was number 14 that has called him and said, you're my dad. He was a busy man. He didn't know I existed. And I've spoken to him once. I'm working on going to visit him, and I will make more videos about that. But right now I'm focusing on my grandma Letta. So she was also adopted. She told me that she found out her biological mother didn't live far from them. So she decided she was going to go meet her. And her biological mother, Caroline is her name, she was very angry. She did not want to see her. She did not want to meet her. She told her, I gave you away for a reason. So it was heartbreaking for my grandmother, I'm sure. She was only a young girl at the time she went to meet her. So that didn't turn out so well for her. My story turned out beautiful, but not everybody's does. So, but there are a few patterns I saw to just see in her life that I carried into my life, and I didn't even know it. She was married 4 times. When her husbands would pass, within 2 years she would marry another one. And a lot of them she found through pen pals. One of them was from prison. not a lot of healthy choices for her, but she didn't feel she could be alone. And I see that in my family, like myself, for many years. I always had to have somebody in my life, or I didn't feel complete, which it really wasn't a healthy complete, because they were abusive men. They were not good for me. But that was a cycle. She was married 4 times. She had my mother and my mother's sister with my grandfather Marvin, and he passed away at a very young age, only after they were married for a couple of years. And 2 years later, she met Clarence, which Clarence is the man that adopted my mother as his own. My mother never knew her father, so Clarence was her father to her. And he was the man that, when she was pregnant with me, she wasn't allowed to eat at the table with them. He wasn't very nice to her because she was pregnant at 12 years old with me. So she stayed with him. My grandmother stayed with Clarence for many years. They had 3 children. And he passed away. And when he passed away, 2 years later, she married Stan. And she met Stan through pen pal in prison. And when he got out of prison, he moved in with her and she married him. So it's not so healthy. She always needed another one. The next guy, the next guy. And I see that pattern before I started to wake. And generally they weren't very good to her. Abusive. And not always physically, but emotionally, which I feel is worse than physical. Bruises go away. Emotional pain inside doesn't dissipate. Anyway, so she married Stan. She was with him, and that's when I met her, was when she was with Stan. And he passed away also. And I got to meet her, but she didn't seem happy.